So from a Fabric's concept, and this is where, as an administrator, we need to start and understand these things so that we've got a good grounding to be able to do our job. Now, the first thing that we need to know about is a tenant. Now, that's our Azure tenancy that we need to enable Fabric so that we can use it in our environment. To do that, we do have to be a member of one of these roles that we can see. So we've got our Fabric admin, or if you are coming from that Power BI background, it's formerly known as the Power BI admin. The other ones, and this is where it's starting to pull together from those different components in the Azure stack, we've got Power Platform admin. Okay, Power Platform on its own is another feature. Okay, but with that one, or our Microsoft 365 admins. The other one is if you're a global admin of the Azure tenant. Okay, with those, we're then able to enable Fabric inside of our tenant and manage the different settings and configurations, which we will have a look at for our end users to be able to use that. Once we've got our tenant in place, capacity. Now, this is a big thing that we need to be aware of, right? We don't create it. We'll have a look how we can create it and what are our different capacity units that we can use. But this is where we get to design and use. We've got a single capacity. We could use that across multiple workloads, multiple workspaces, or depending on what we're wanting to do, we're able to create multiple capacities. And those capacities range from capacity 2, so that's 2 capacity units, all the way up to 2048 capacity units. That's what we see down there on the bottom. What we need to be aware of, if you happen to be doing or wanting to get certified as a data engineer and you could go and sit the DP 700 exam, you do need to know about the various capacity units and understand what capacity units give you various feature sets, okay? Because the 64 capacity units is that tipping point where you get full access to every capacity unit. But you might not need, I shouldn't say every capacity unit, every feature in Fabric. But you might not need to use every feature, so you can actually start with the lower capacity unit. And this is where it comes down at a cost. Okay, so we do need to be wary of that. And we'll have a look at what that kind of looks like a little bit later on in the demo. But what we are able to do to assist from that cost is we're able to scale up, scale down, and we can even pause our capacity so that we're not running up costs when we don't need to use it. Now, the difference from this from when we had Synapse was a capacity. So with our dedicated SQL pools was a capacity per workload, and we weren't able to share that. This is where Fabric really comes into its own, where we've got that capacity going across the bottom that we can have across our shared workloads that may be in different workspaces, different people using them at different times. And that's one of the benefits from it. We do need to understand about domains, okay? Or before we skip to domains, if we do want to know about what's coming up, just a bit of a blog post for you to be able to go to so that you can keep track of all of the changes which are coming in Fabric. Now, from a domains point of view, domains are just, they're a logical grouping, okay? Making it easy for us to be able to work out how do we want to group things together? How do we want different processing? We can see up in the top right-hand corner, you may have heard of a thing called data mesh. And this is where we're able to take data from lots of different disparate locations, pull them all together, process those, but put them into various domains. Now we can see up there, we've got sales, marketing, HR. They are logical, okay? But it means that in our HR domain, we're creating a workspace which has our appropriate items, and we'll talk about what those items are, but only those people in HR are able to see those. Same as with sales. Only the salespeople can see what they need to have access to. Now, the beauty of it is, with our domains, you can then create subdomains. Now, a subdomain, once again, is just a logical grouping, but that may be if For example, you do have sales. It may be a different region inside of sales because you might be interested in knowing about, well, what are our sales in the US? What are our sales in the EU? What are our sales down here in Australia? It gives us the ability to easily manage those. Once we've got our domains created, workspaces, this is where all of the work is undertaken. And we need to, as an administrator, we really need to know about workspaces because not only are we looking at who has access, we've got what type of access people have, what type of items can they create. And that's kind of dictated based on the license that that end user has, which we'll touch on in a little bit. But we're able to set that granular security down to the item level. Our task flows, what are we picking up the data from? Where are we going to? Who has access to that? The big benefit here, Git integration. And this has evolved over the time since we got Fabric. Okay. And we'll have a look in the demo as to what that Git integration looks like. Now, when I'm normally doing this session at like Data Saturdays, SQL Saturdays, etc., that one bullet point there on Git integration, I like to call out that in itself is an entire session. So it gives you a bit of an idea on the breadth and what you need to know about from a Git integration. I've got it just in a single bullet point, right? But it is far, far deeper that we need to understand. Then lastly, we've got the items. Well, what are they? They're what we can create, and they're the artifacts that we're able to create inside of that workspace. And we can see here, we've got what they look like inside of our workspace. Well, what are they? We can create apps. We can create lake houses. We can create warehouses, reports, semantic models, etc. Once we've created those, you're then able to set who has access to use those, right? And so your semantic models really come into their own on being able to share those permissions on who has access to reuse those semantic models for different people creating different reports. Our settings. I've taken some screenshots and these are straight out of the admin portal that we will see once we've logged in. So I'm not going to go through them. It's just here so that you're able to see them, and then we'll discuss them in the demo, right? But our preferences. This is where we're able to set up those configurations. Like, do we have any colors that we want? Do we have any of the logos, etc. From our resources and extensions, well, what are we wanting people to use? As we can see here, we've got Power BI settings. We've got our managing our connections and gateways, or even managing embedded code. Our governance and insights, this is where we're jumping out to Purview and going and setting up those tags, identifying that data, scanning the data, and we'll touch on those later on in today's session. User management. So we mentioned depending on what type of features you can use, what items you can access, this comes down to the type of license that you're using. And as we can see here, it is all based on your Microsoft 365 account. Okay, so you must have that 365 account, which then gives you an Entra ID, which allows us to lock things down and give you access. Now, we can start off with a free license. This gives us limited access, but it allows us to start and play, right? So we can access the web app. We'll have a look. What does that look like? We can access or create a Fabric workspace as long as you as the administrator have enabled people to create those. So you can lock it down that no, not everybody can. We can create non-Power BI items. Now that's important, okay? Because this is where it comes down to those licensing levels, but creating non-Power BI items in the workspace. You can share non-Power BI items in the workspace. We can view shared Power BI items as long as the capacity that the workspace is associated with is a 64 CU or higher. Now we'll have a look at what that costs. Then we've got our capacity licenses, which is where we're able to purchase the capacity and that capacity is assigned across the board. We've got um, the old Power BI licenses, right? So you've got your pro and you've got premium licenses, and they then dictate what you can do. Licensing is a whole thing on its own.